Hello, ladies and gentlemen. So you may notice this setup is a little bit different. This is now the fourth time that I have attempted to record this video. I probably look crazy right now because I'm losing my mind. Apparently, the program that I use does not want to cooperate with me today, and it has deleted the 3 previous videos that I recorded for you and will not save them. So we're trying something different and hopefully this works. But I'm losing it. It's the most Wednesday-ist Wednesday that there ever could be. Let's get into our Today in History, brighten things up a little bit. Today in History, May 27th, 1943. A B-24 carrying U.S. airman and former Olympic runner Louis Zamperini crashes into the Pacific Ocean. After surviving the crash, Zamperini floated on a raft in shark-infested waters for more than a month before being picked up by the Japanese and spending the next 2 years in a series of brutal POW camps. All right, so I picked this one because you guys are reading Unbroken, and that is all about Louis Zamperini and his life. You learn a little bit about his life leading up to his time in the military, but primarily the book focuses on his life in these POW camps during those 2 years as a prisoner, which I think is extremely interesting because it ties into what we did with World War II. While, yes, we did talk about what it was like fighting the Japanese, what they were like as soldiers, a little bit about how they treated their prisoners of war. We didn't get into it as much as I would have liked to just because of time. So this is a really interesting first-hand account of how the Japanese treated their prisoners of war, what they were like as captors, and really how brutal they were. So very interesting, very intense stuff. But I thought it was very interesting that today is the day that his plane actually goes down, and that series of 2 terrible years in his life are kick-started. Right? So let's get into our actual work for today. Okay, so, sorry. Yesterday, you guys read all about the Bay of Pigs invasion, where it talked about Castro's rise to power, how he is able to overthrow the democratic government that the U.S. had set up in Cuba following the Spanish-American War, and how this is alarming to the United States that there is now a communist threat less than 100 miles off of the coast of the United States. And then you read a little bit about the different pieces of advice that JFK was given in terms of how to deal with this threat. And what he should do there, and you had to make a decision what of these 3 different pieces of advice, these 3 different options that are proposed to JFK, is the best possible plan of action and which one he should choose, and you had to justify to me why he should choose this one. Why is that the best plan of action? How is that going to be the most successful for the United States? And then finally down here, you read about the Bay of Pigs invasion, where you found out which plan he actually went with. Right? And JFK decides to go with the plan where we essentially organize a group of Cuban exiles. These are people who had been pushed out of the country, mainly because of their opposing views to those of Castro. And we train these men, we arm them, and we send them into Cuba to stage a revolution with the help of the United States. And the U.S. is supposed to send in air support in order to help these men. However, what should have been a top secret mission is leaked, and word gets out that the United States is planning on doing this. And the U.S. doesn't look good, JFK doesn't look good, and in order to try and save face, JFK cancels the air support that's supposed to go help these Cuban rebels and essentially leaves them to be slaughtered by Castro and his men, and they are slaughtered. It is a bloodbath, it is terrible, and is probably one of the most embarrassing moments in JFK's presidency. Right? It is something that will go down as one of his worst failures as a president. Pretty terrible. Right. And then you had to answer these 2 questions about was it a success, why or why not, and then what did Castro do in response to protect himself from another attack? And that really plays into what you're going to be learning about today. So now there's this established bad blood between the United States and Cuba because the U.S. has inserted ourselves in Cuban affairs. We've tried to orchestrate an overthrow of the Cuban government. And obviously Castro is going to be unhappy about that. And it's only going to make the bond between Castro and Khrushchev stronger. And it's going to propel the Cold War deeper into the mess that it has become. So here we're going to look at an event known as the Cuban Missile Crisis. The Cuban Missile Crisis lasts for 13 days, and the 13-day period is what many historians refer to as the most dangerous 13 days in world history, because this is the closest that we had or have ever come to real nuclear world war. The threat was there every single day, and it was something that the U.S. actively was trying to deal with and trying to avoid. So you guys are going to look at how that happens. How does this situation come about? In source one, you're going to read about Soviet arms buildup in Cuba. So now that the Soviet Union and Cuba have established this bond and this relationship, the Soviet Union is using that to their advantage, and they have established these nuclear arms bases in Cuba, 100 miles off the coast of the United States, which is extremely alarming to the United States, the U.S. president, and it's something that we need to deal with immediately in order to try to avoid that threat, right? Because we know that intercontinental ballistic missiles could have reached the United States in 30 minutes, right? Coming from the Soviet Union, which is across an entire ocean and on a completely different continent. But now you have these missiles less than 100 miles off the coast of the United States. That's within the matter of a minute, a few seconds that they could be hitting major cities in the US. And that's a real problem because we know that nuclear weapons don't work like regular bombs, and that they impact the immediate area where they hit. A nuclear weapon is much more catastrophic, much more devastating than that, where it kind of creates that mushroom effect where it can span hundreds of miles out from where the initial impact is. So if you have bombs hitting major cities all across the United States, it's devastating all of the US. It's devastating parts of Canada. It's devastating to Mexico. If the United States is launching things back at Cuba, it's devastating to those islands in the Caribbean surrounding Cuba. And if we're launching them at the Soviet Union, it's devastating to the dozens of satellite smaller countries that surround the Soviet Union, right? So we want to avoid war at all costs. So here we're going to look at what is Kennedy's plan of action. How is he going to deal with the fact that there are nuclear weapons off the coast of the United States? How can we try to neutralize this situation? And then finally here, we're going to see what actually happens. How do we successfully avoid nuclear world war? Which you guys know because obviously you know that it never happened. Okay, so all super interesting stuff. I think the sources are pretty straightforward. They're not too long, and we've broken them up into different sections so that it's a little bit easier for you guys to understand and a little bit more digestible. All right. That will, of course, all be in our Google slide. I will link the video in here when I'm done. And then if you guys happen to have a chance, make sure that you stop by and check out the final positivity video that we're putting out today. One last group of teachers and faculty members that just want to wish you guys well and let you know how much we do miss you. All right. So that should be everything. If you have any questions, please make sure to reach out to me or make sure you stop by our Google Meets office hours that will be happening tomorrow morning. All right. But that should be everything. And of course, as always, guys, stay safe and make good choices. Bye.